On today's podcast, we interview Kevin Lawton of the New Warehouse Podcast and get his top 10 warehouse safety tips. So stay tuned. Welcome to Warehouse Safety Tips. You can find the show notes to each episode, links to information mentioned on the podcast, the social media platforms we're on, and anything else related to the podcast at warehousesafetytips.com. Now, if you're a seasoned podcast listener, this podcast is going to be different from most you listen to. It's based around exactly what the name implies, warehouse safety tips. And since the people in this industry are busy, we know that time is money and each episode will be as short and to the point as possible. And now, with all of that out of the way, let's get to the podcast.
Okay, so I have Kevin Lawton from the New Warehouse Podcast. You can find him at thenewwarehouse.com. And what he's going to share with us is his top 10 warehouse safety tips. How you doing today, Kevin?
All right. Thanks for having me, Wes. How are you?
I'm doing great. Thanks for asking.
Definitely. So, I'm going to give you my top 10 safety tips here on Warehouse Safety Tips. I appreciate what you do with the podcast on your end. Definitely a really good resource that I discovered recently when I was at Modex, as we were just talking about the other day. So very interesting stuff. So I guess my first and probably maybe, I don't want to say the biggest. They're all equally important because safety is all equally important. But my first would be when traveling with PIT or powered industrial truck, make sure that your forks are lowered at all times. I've had incidents where people have not lowered their forks and they've destroyed racking on multiple occasions, actually. So very, very important, not only for equipment and property's sake, but also for people's sake as well. Because if you get a beam falling down, that is not a good thing. So number two, this is a small one, and I guess I'll combine number two and number three. So I'll preface number three with number two, and that would be enforce the small things. So there's a lot of times where I think, we have these little safety measures we put in place, like you're supposed to wear, like number three would be when you're moving pallets to wear gloves. So something like that, a lot of people may not have that built into their safety culture as just a regular employee coming in. And I think that's really important to enforce the small things, because then that creates the safety culture and makes it more important. And people recognize that, not only from a leadership standpoint, but the company itself is serious about safety. And if they're going to be on top of you about the little things like wearing gloves when moving pallets, which seems somewhat insignificant, I guess, in the grand scheme of things, but little things like that, trying to just prevent you from getting splinters, getting cuts, anything like that, I think that kind of drives home the point of how important safety is within your facility and within your organization. And then number four, so I did number two and three combo there. So number four would be to make sure that you make eye contact with all of your PIT drivers, all your forklift operators. The one thing I always tell people is if you see that driver, that doesn't mean that the driver sees you. There can be blind spots on the machine. Definitely run into incidents where, myself, I've been walking, I thought that the driver saw me because I was out there in the open, but they didn't. So unless you make eye contact, don't be sure that that person sees you, or else, you might get hit. And that could be catastrophic. The next one is, it's a little thing, and it kind of goes over into 5S overall, but picking up trash, picking up little pieces of wood from pallets or strapping, tape, even little pieces of wrap on the ground. All that is incredibly important, because picking up that trash, it's not just a cleanliness thing, but from a standpoint of taking things off the ground that can potentially cause hazards, like tripping hazards, anything that can get stuck in your machinery and cause further damage, all those different types of things. And just from an overall good feeling and good work environment, you want to make sure that you keep things clean and make sure you pick up any of those things that can be a problem.
Before moving on, here's a word from one of our sponsors. If you've ever been to or worked in a warehouse, you know just how important safety is to both management and staff. It's almost impossible to go 10 steps without seeing safety tape, angles, signs, and/or safety products. It's these items that show us how to be safe and avoid danger in the workplace. And if you're looking for the best products to make this happen, look no further than Mighty Line. Mighty Line floor signs and floor markings offer the best industrial products out there. We're proud to have Mighty Line as the official floor sign and floor marking company for the Warehouse Safety Tips podcast and site. Go to mightylinetape.com/safety tips to request a sample pack of their incredible safety signs and floor markings. Now back to the podcast.
The next one is see something, say something. So if you see something that looks off from any standpoint, you should say something, but especially from a safety standpoint. So, if you see that you're loading a pallet into a rack and maybe the pallet seems like a little off, or maybe there's already a pallet in that racking spot or that bay, and there's something off about the pallet, whether it looks like it's crooked, it's broken, don't just put your pallet and say, my pallet's good and I'm going to go away. Call the attention to whether it's your manager, lead, safety manager in the building. Make sure you get their attention so you can look at it and take any corrective action necessary. With that being said, I think that proper investigation is also a big thing. So that would be number 6. A proper investigation is important because we do everything that we can to prevent incidents from happening. But sometimes things happen that you could not predict, that you would not know what happened in your facility. And you don't really know that they could happen until they do happen. So making sure that anytime you have any kind of safety incident and taking proper steps to fully investigate it and understand why did it happen, what happened exactly, and then how can we take action to prevent it in the long run, I think is super, super important to continue to drive that safety improvement and continue to drive the safety culture. And it's important to involve your staff and your overall team in that as well, so they can understand and then kind of take that and share it so you can get a lot of learnings from that. The next one is make sure that you secure any loads that you're traveling with. I've seen loads tip over, unfortunately. Fortunately, nobody has gotten hurt from them. Nobody's been around when I've seen them tip over. But that's really important, especially, as we tend to rush sometimes to get the job done, or get that last pallet picked or get that last pallet moved at the end of the shift. And maybe we may take the step to not secure the load, or the person that put it on the pallet at the receiving dock, whatever the case may be, may not secure it. We want to make sure that's properly secured, because if we take just a little too much speed around that curve, then all that product's going to fall off. And if somebody's there, it could hurt them, definitely. We can damage product. We don't want to do that as well. And we don't want to cause any other issues past that. The next one is to document everything. So any kind of safety policy, safety procedure that you have, you want to have some kind of SOP or standard work to back that up. And you want to make sure that you're training that out to every employee that comes in the door, whether they're a temp that's going to be there for a week or a couple of days. You want to make sure that they understand. You want to drive home that culture and what's acceptable and what's unacceptable from a safety standpoint, because safety is number one against anything. So you want to make sure that you have everything documented, and we kind of take that back to proper investigation as well. And doing that proper investigation, you want to make sure that you document fully that investigation, so you understand what happened and you can call back on it. And you can, if something similar happens again, then you can look and see, what did we do to fix this in the past, and what worked, what didn't work. So you want to make sure that you're documenting all that stuff and you have it handy for reference. The other one, the last one, is make sure that you talk to your employees and make sure you listen to them. And, make sure your employees are listening to you back as well. This one, I think, is extremely important, because as a leader in the warehouse, whether you're manager, plant manager, director, whatever level you're at, If you're not actually doing the day-to-day work in the warehouse, then it's really hard for you to fully understand what's happening out there on the floor and what's happening during those processes. So it's really important that you engage with your employees, make sure that you talk to them, and if they have anything that they think is an issue, make sure that you listen to them and make sure that they know that you're listening to them, right? So you may have somebody come up to you and say, oh, there's an issue, I think, in this one aisle because there's a column or something creates kind of a blind spot, whatever the case may be. Don't just say, oh, okay, yeah, I'll take a look at it. Make sure that you follow up with them. You go check it out, whether you can check it out at that moment or not. Make sure you do, because that's important, because you want to establish that culture where the employees are open and can talk to you and bring these things to your attention so that you can prevent any kind of safety issues from happening in the future. So those are my 10 safety tips. I hope that they're helpful. So Wes, thank you very much for giving me the opportunity to share those.
Oh, absolutely. And I got to tell you, I think a couple of those, they're all great, but a couple are really great in the sense that with the 5S or 6S, if you include safety as one of the S's,
right.
Going through and having a constant, never-ending improvement of what you do, and the communication that you were talking about, the see something, say something, all that kind of stuff is the things that are going to go and allow people to find what is wrong and either get rid of something, add something, change something, but in essence, always be continuously improving and not just falling back on that, we've always done it that way mentality. Because I think, unfortunately, there's just a lot of people out there right now, that follow along with that sort of a thing. And, in the, things that we're dealing with right now, I know it's not real evergreen to talk about it, right. But, with the coronavirus pandemic that's going on, there is going to be a brand new set of, rules and regulations and procedures that are going to be put in place that never would have been addressed before, but now it's going to be, right on the tip of everyone's tongue in meetings and cultures, because it's something that we've never experienced before, but now, is going to be in the forefront. So I just think that those are great tips. I appreciate you sharing them.
Definitely. Yeah. Thank you for the opportunity to share them. And, always I stress, safety is number one. And I think if you can have a safe environment for your workers, then, that's also going to kind of flourish more productivity from them as well, because they're going to feel comfortable. They're going to feel safe, and, they're going to want to perform more and be able to perform more easily as well.
Well, that's great. Well, guys, do me a favor, check out Kevin, go to thenewwarehouse.com and be sure to check out the New Warehouse podcast. He's going to have all sorts of tips and tricks and interviews and, remotes and just all sorts of stuff that are going to be a great resource for you if you're looking to, kind of find out what's going on and what the latest techniques and cultures and safety procedures are. So, Kevin, thank you very much for being on the podcast.
Thank you.
We hope you enjoyed this episode of Warehouse Safety Tips. If you visit warehousesafetytips.com, you'll find the show notes for this episode and access to all of our blog posts, previous podcasts, advertiser information, and much more. Thank you for listening to Warehouse Safety Tips, and have a safe day.